Hello, I am Dr. Emma Blake, and I'm honored to share the next layer of our research with you today, building directly on the conversation we started about the second sexual renaissance. For decades, we've been told a lie about female pleasure, that it declines after 50, and that your most powerful experience depends on locating one tiny, frustratingly elusive spot, the G-spot. I am here to tell you that both are profoundly misleading myths. Stop searching externally. The key to the deepest, most transformative pleasure pathway in the mature body isn't about friction or hormones. It's about a subtle, neurological master switch known as the vagus nerve. This deep, internal connection is the secret behind the full body, seismic orgasm my participants report. Today, I'm going to prove it with science and give you the 3-step method to unlock this power, leaving the localized climaxes of your youth feeling entirely obsolete. The problem with the G-spot narrative is that it imposes a scarcity model on female pleasure, suggesting that the most powerful experiences are dependent upon locating one tiny, specific, high-pressure zone. And when hormones shift, as they invariably do after 50, and the sensitivity of the superficial tissue changes, that single point can become less responsive, or sometimes even painful to engage. This led countless women in my study to a false conclusion that their capacity for strong pleasure was gone. I call this the sexual shutdown fallacy. My work shows, unequivocally, that the capacity is not gone. It is simply rerouted by the magnificent, adapting architecture of the aging body. The focus must shift from the highly localized, external wiring, the Pudendal nerve pathway, to the deep, internal, whole-body wiring of the vagus nerve. This is the crucial neurological pivot that defines mature sexuality. The vagus nerve, which I'll explain in detail shortly, is less about speed and intensity, and far more about sustained resonance and profound relaxation. It is the difference between a sudden, bright flash and a deep, sustained, resonating vibration that ripples through every cell. Now, let's look at the science of the vagus nerve connection, which is the undeniable hero of this story. The vagus nerve, whose name literally means wandering, is the longest cranial nerve in the body, traveling from the brainstem all the way down through the neck and chest, passing through the diaphragm, and intimately connecting to almost every major organ, including the heart, the lungs, and critically for our discussion, the deep internal pelvic organs, particularly the uterus and the area surrounding the cervix. It is the commander-in-chief of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the physiological system responsible for rest, digest, and connection. Most external or superficial sexual stimulation, like clitoral friction, relies on the faster, localized pudendal nerve. The pudendal nerve is like the express lane to the spinal cord, giving a quick, intense, and often localized genital response. It's effective, but it rarely produces that full-body, mind-blowing release that my participants described as seismic. The vagus nerve, however, is the scenic route, and it is activated not by fast friction, but by deep, sustained internal pressure and vibration. When the area we call the anterior fornix, that little internal space nestled deep near the cervix, is engaged with firm, steady intention, the signal doesn't just register in the genitals. It is transmitted directly through the vagal pathway, bypassing the local sensory overload, and lighting up the brain's core relaxation and attachment centers. This neurological activation is slow, pervasive, and powerful. It's what triggers the massive release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and dopamine, the pleasure chemical, leading to an orgasm that isn't just a muscular climax, but a state of profound, integrative surrender. The aging process actually facilitates this shift. As hormonal support diminishes, the pudendal pathway can become less dominant, effectively opening the door for the vagus nerve to take center stage. The body is saying, the fast way is closed. Now try the deep connected way. Our job is simply to listen and follow the new instructions. It is vital to pause here and understand why this parasympathetic activation is so critical, yet so often blocked in modern women. We live in a state of chronic, low-level sympathetic dominance, the fight-or-flight mode. Decades of career stress, family demands, and the pervasive cultural pressure to constantly do and be more, wires the nervous system to remain perpetually on high alert. This chronic tension manifests physically as subtle clenching in the jaw, the shoulders, and most significantly for our conversation, in the deep pelvic floor. When the sympathetic system is dominant, it is biologically impossible for the vagus nerve, the rest and connect nerve, to open the floodgates of pleasure. The body perceives deep relaxation as a vulnerability, and it instinctively resists the surrender required for the integrative orgasm. This is why the three-step method is not just a sexual technique. It is a profound practice in overcoming physiological anxiety. It demands that you intentionally downshift your entire nervous system, requiring a maturity and self-awareness that often only comes with age. The goal is to consciously turn off the internal alarm system, so the body can finally feel safe enough to experience true, deep bliss. This understanding is the foundation of the three-step method we developed with my participants. It is a methodical approach designed to leverage the vagus nerve and harness the innate power of the deep pelvic musculature. The goal is to move beyond the reactive, short-burst pleasure of youth and cultivate a sustained whole-body, vagally driven experience. This is a method that requires patience, communication, and a conscious shift in intention from both the woman and her partner. If a partner is involved, it's not about finding a single spot. It's about creating a profound internal environment for deep pleasure. The first step of the method is preparation and pelvic awakening. This step is non-negotiable and addresses the lifetime of tension and unconscious holding we accumulate in the pelvic basin, which can severely dampen the vagal response. You cannot access deep pleasure if your engine room is locked down. This preparation begins with conscious, deep breathing, specifically diaphragmatic breathing, that allows the belly to rise and fall fully. As you breathe, you want to focus on softening the deep pelvic floor muscles on the exhale, imagining them melting like butter. This is the opposite of the clenching and tightening we usually associate with arousal. We are establishing a state of deep parasympathetic calm before any physical touch begins. The importance of this phase cannot be overstated. The pelvis must shift from being a container of tensions to a scaffolding of sensation. The connective tissue, the fascia, the musculature, all must become supple to efficiently transmit the deep pressure necessary for the vagal activation. Once you have found this relaxed state, you incorporate focused, slow-motion pelvic floor engagement. Not fast kegels, but extremely deliberate, slow contractions of the deep muscles that feel like an internal elevator rising slowly, and then, crucially, falling even slower. This trains the muscles to become a voluntary, responsive engine of pleasure, capable of the propulsion phase later on. The goal here is not arousal, but proprioception, the awareness of that deep, internal structure. This phase typically takes between 5 and 10 minutes, and it is the necessary bridge from a busy, stress-filled external life into the quiet, powerful internal world where the vagus nerve resides. Without this deep relaxation, the vagus nerve remains dormant, overpowered by the external anxious world. The second step is sustained anterior fornix engagement. Once the body is relaxed and the pelvic floor is awakened, the focus shifts to initiating the vagal response. This step is defined by its characteristic, sustained, consistent, deep pressure applied to the area of the anterior fornix, that unsexy spot we discussed, situated on the front wall of the vagina, deep inside, near the cervix. This requires a tool or a partner's finger to enter slowly, using deep, non-frictional pressure. The motion is not a rapid push-pull. It is a slow, deep press and hold, a movement that relies on the depth and circumference of the pelvis to transmit pressure, not on the sensitivity of the vaginal lining. Imagine you are trying to push a deeply set internal button, maintaining steady, heavy contact for several seconds before a slow release and repositioning. The key differentiator here is the lack of friction. Friction stimulates the pudendal nerve, which is exactly what we are trying to quiet. Deep pressure stimulates the stretch receptors around the deep pelvic organs, sending that slow, pervasive signal directly up the vagus nerve. I often tell my participants to teach their partners the difference between a pecking touch, the shallow, rapid, friction-based stimulation common in youth, and an anchoring touch, the steady, firm, unmoving contact that respects the deep internal sensitivity. The anchoring touch is patient and demanding in its patience. It's during this stage that the challenge often arises, the instinctive urge, particularly from partners, to speed up or introduce friction when the pressure doesn't immediately yield a result. This is where communication becomes a sacred act. The woman must gently guide the pressure back to that deep, non-moving anchor, allowing the low-frequency vibrational energy to accumulate. The sensation will not initially feel like intense pleasure. It will often be described as a deep, resonant fullness, or even a feeling of being uncomfortably centered. This feeling of fullness is the vagus nerve, signaling that it has received the message. It is at this point, after several minutes of sustained deep pressure, often 3 to 5 minutes minimum, that the seismic energy begins to gather. The woman will feel an internal trembling, or a heavy, low-frequency hum, start to build deep within her core, spreading outward like warm honey. This is the activation of the parasympathetic flood, the body preparing for its ultimate release. This sustained patient engagement is absolutely critical. Rushing this step is the most common reason why women fail to access the integrative orgasm. It is a lesson in patience and trust in the body's new timetable. The third step is propulsion and release. This is where the awakened pelvic floor, trained in step 1, becomes the engine of ecstasy. Once the deep internal humming has begun, and the feeling of seismic energy is undeniable, the focus shifts entirely from the pressure point to the muscular action. The woman is instructed to initiate that slow, deep rising contraction of the pelvic floor she practiced earlier, but this time, with intention and force, pushing into the building wave of vagal energy. This voluntary, powerful contraction acts like a muscular slingshot, taking the deep, resonant energy gathered by the vagus nerve and propelling it upward and outward in a full-body wave. This is why the orgasm feels seismic. It involves the entire internal musculature, generating a physical ripple that is far broader and slower than a localized friction-based spasm. The release phase is characterized by a feeling of profound, unclenched freedom. The muscular wave lasts significantly longer than conventional orgasms, often resulting in a continuous, flowing series of whole-body pulses that continue until the vagal energy is completely dissipated. After the integrative orgasm, the physiological and psychological state is one of deep, enduring peace. The body is flooded with that powerful oxytocin, leading to a feeling of incredible connection and emotional well-being that lasts for hours, if not days. It is a regenerative experience, not merely a climax. This entire 3-step process, preparation, engagement, propulsion, is a masterclass in mature sexual presence. It's about being fully in the body, using intention and breath to activate a pleasure system that has been lying dormant, waiting for the wisdom of age to finally unlock it. It is the reward for the journey, a deep knowing that your body, far from slowing down, has merely matured into a more refined instrument of joy. The new language of pleasure is depth, not speed. The psychological benefits are perhaps the most compelling part of this research. When women finally realize that their capacity for profound pleasure is not only intact, but has deepened and become more fulfilling after 50, it reverses decades of internal sexual shaming and performance anxiety. They cease to worry about external appearance or localized sensitivity. Their focus shifts from "am I attractive enough" to "am I present enough?" This move from external evaluation to internal experience is the true essence of the second sexual renaissance. The vagus nerve acts as the biological reminder that our deepest needs are for safety, connection, and relaxation, and that the most powerful form of pleasure is found not in struggle, but in surrender to the body's own rhythm. This 3-step method isn't just about achieving an orgasm. It's a practice of somatic self-acceptance. It teaches women to inhabit their bodies fully, to understand their anatomical landscape, and to use their conscious muscle control to initiate joy. The unsexy spot and the vagus nerve together offer a permanent, sustainable pathway to pleasure that is resilient to hormonal changes and external expectations. It is a powerful affirmation that the best, most centered, most joyful moments of physical life are often reserved for those who have taken the time to truly know themselves, to listen to the whispers of their deepest, most enduring internal architecture. My hope is that this method gives you the permission and the practical guide to reclaim your sexual power and step fully into the profound ecstasy that awaits you in the second, and potentially best, half of your life. Thank you for being open to this conversation.